Shortly. Hello, and welcome back to the live stream, guys. Today we're going to be talking all about going from paperful to paperless. And of course, to talk about going paperless, we have to invite the one and only Tom, this way, onto the stream.
You caught me by surprise. Oh, I'm live.
See, I didn't tell him I was doing this, and
yeah,
I was making sure you were awake, Tom.
Good morning.
How are you doing besides me throwing you on a live stream at last second?
Yeah, I had no idea. You caught me by surprise. I'm sitting here 24/7. So yeah, sometimes you pop in and somebody else comes by. So no, thanks for inviting me to your live show. Really excited.
To have you.
I love your channel, as so many know already in the Paperless Movement. So it's good to be on your show now. So you've been already in mine. So yes, we ticked another box, isn't it? So we can just stop now.
Now we're done. We finished everything. And for those who don't know, do you want to give a little bit of a bio, Tom, about who you are and why I call you the paperless person?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dr. Thomas Rödel, but most maybe know me as Tom Solid in the internet. And I went paperless in 2017. Yeah, that was the first time I got an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil and learned full paperless in corporate, actually, which is not that easy, being the only paperless person there. And this is when I launched a YouTube channel and talking about what tools, what handwriting note-taking apps I use and what other tools I combine with this. And this is how the YouTube channel started. But in my day job, I was actually always improving processes. So I worked in corporate for 8 years as a business analyst and big data analysis and things like that. And I focused always on team performance improvements. So what I did there, the biggest success, I would say, would be increasing team performance by 60% with the same headcount by just implementing the right conventions, actually a ticketing system that I programmed myself. And yeah, this is why I ended up in IT. And now I quit and I'm full-time Paperless Movement. So yeah, guys, you have to bear with me now. More Paperless Movement there.
Yeah, you're going to have so much time. It's going to be scary to see what you'll be able to build now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a side hustle. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's like you. As long as you have efficient systems in place, it's insane what you can actually achieve.
Well, I have a bunch of questions about the efficiency side of things, and now that you're going full time. But before we get on to the very important questions, I have to ask, Tom Solid, where did the name come from? Because we've been chatting for a while, but I have never heard the backstory.
Oh, right. Okay, we never talked about this. Okay, yeah.
So I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, actually, when I was a gamer, when I had time to game, actually, somebody asked me, Tom Solid, so you coming from the porn industry? And I thought, okay, maybe it wasn't that good to name myself Tom Solid in this case, but it seems it was just on one occasion that somebody connected it this way. The real story behind that is that I was actually doing music, and it's my artist name, Tom Solid. And I published a music album on iTunes in 2009. And I was called Psytox back then. And then I wanted to publish it and I realized, oh no, there's another Psytox. So I have to find a new name. So I was walking around with my wife and talking about what could it be. And then I said, you know what? I'm just entering a solid state in my life because I finished studying and, you know, getting first child and things like that. So this is why we ended up with Tom Solid. And everybody called me Tom anyway before that. So
yeah. Huh. I never knew. So
and now I tell you a secret. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I hope nobody is listening and watching. I mean, I hope it for you, but the signature that you see, the Tom Solid signature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This was actually, this was actually my mother.
Wait,
I said, yeah, she made this signature.
I have to. I wish so I could funny. Pull it up here. I don't know where. I know it's on all.
I don't know where we can find now because we are just reworking the website. But yeah,
that is.
This is actually.
There is one.
Yeah, that's a fun fact. Nobody knew about. You're the first one learning about that.
So your mom's the one with the nice handwriting for the
Yeah,
fancy little signet. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
exactly. So I copied it and doing it myself now. But the reason is that I was building a cover then for the music album. And then
Oh my
I
gosh.
tested different fonts. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, my mother came up and made just a few different signatures. And I said, oh, yeah, that looks natural and cool and not generic. And this is how we ended up there. And it's
Wow.
there ever since. So whenever you have a newsletter from me or I'm reaching out to
Hmm.
you and you see this Tom Solid, that was my mother.
That okay, so did your mother need to write it because she's just got really good handwriting, or are you so paperless that you don't even use pens anymore, and so you couldn't be bothered to
I
find your
wasn't
writing
paperless back
utensils?
then. I wasn't
Okay.
paperless. It was the music production thing. So when you go on my YouTube channel, you go to the very first videos. They are all about music production, how you use these programs and how you do actually visualization of your music, things like that. Before I
Wow.
started the actual Paperless Movement channel.
You know,
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it?
we're notorious for going off topic, but to start so wonderfully off topic, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
We could talk the whole evening just about this. You know me already.
Well, let me segue here. So, legitimate question here. I'll get into the business hat on. We talked about the fact that your mother wrote the signature, and I get that maybe you just don't know how to use a pen anymore. Can we talk a little bit about paperless? Because one of the things that we were chatting the other day, and you were talking about how, and earlier today, about getting printed materials and sending it off to your members because you run a membership and other
Mm,
things like that, which I feel like to the people listening who are thinking they're coming onto a live stream about going paperless, to hear someone talk about, I'm going to give paper to people, seems like completely at odds. So
yeah,
I would love to just ask you the basic question: what does paperless actually mean? What's the point of
yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly. Good question. So we are just setting up the our mission page on the website where you will now see the details what the paperless movement is all about. But being in many podcasts before, I always got the same question. So Tom, you're the paperless guy, so you hate paper. And I always answer, go up to our living room and you will see a library of books there. And my wife would kill me if I would just throw them away and say, yeah, we are paperless now. And in fact, because you shared the books in the last live stream,
Yeah,
or
I
one of
did.
your last live streams, the books, I have one new book actually. Maybe you know it already. It's the German version, but I listened to the audiobook. Tools of the Titans. I don't know
I
if you
have not
ever
read
heard
it.
about it. Okay, so Tim Ferriss for our work week, you mentioned this one.
Yep.
So have a look. I listened to the 20-hour audible version. It's really worth going this. But why do I show this? Because it's a book that I have here. So I
Yeah.
listen to
So,
20 hours of audiobook and then I buy the actual book because I really like it. And then I put it into the bookshelf and I have the physical sensation, the haptic feedback, if you will. And then I have it as a reminder in the bookshelf. And just by seeing the book, it reminds me of the things that is in there. And then what do I have here? I have
Second
a
Edge.
paper. Yeah. Oh, you know it. You know it. No, it's a yeah, exactly. So, and a fountain pen. So, yeah, people say now, oh my God, this guy talks about paperless and now shows all this stuff. So, it's actually cotton, recycled cotton, it's not trees. But this is not the message of the paperless movement. So, the paperless movement is about um, helping struggling paperless pioneers to leverage the digital world in order instead of just consuming it. And what I mean by that is that we can do so much more in the digital world than we can on paper. And most people don't realize this. So when I switched from my paper notebook to the iPad, all the workflows came along in the beginning. So I was not taking the same, I didn't become any more efficient or more productive because I made the same shit on a different device, if you will. So this is all about the basics, the conventions, the workflows. And this is why we are so connected, Layla,
Mhm.
because you also talk about workflows. And when you start with clients, the first thing is
Yep.
writing down the workflows. And usually it's not there. There's no SOP, there's nothing. That's all in their heads and they think that works. But this is actually all the friction points. And this is what the paperless movement is all about. First of all, getting the basics right with the ICOR framework. But on the other hand, going beyond this, which is only possible in the digital world. So, for example, Roam Research, Obsidian, Notion, they all have now backlinks, something which is a very easy thing to do, technical-wise, from a technical point of view. This is the reason why Notion was so quick in implementing these backlinks as well, because it's a new hype. But it is, well, the principle behind this is the settle custom method. Maybe some of you heard of this already, but it is, why is it only coming now? Also, it is not that complicated. So in the Paperless Movement membership, we have a weekly meetup. And in the last one, there was the CEO of NotePlan. And he's actually now a part of the Paperless Movement as well. And we talked about this again. I said, you offering backlinks, when did you have this in place? When did you implement this into NotePlan? And he said, this was in place already, 2000, whenever he started, 2008 or something, he said. And I said, but he never, made it public because nobody would understand how to use it. And this is where I'm going for now. So he saw now Roam Research, Obsidian coming up. So he just unlocked this feature because it was there already all the time. And this is what's all about. Backlinks is something we can get the note-taking to another level, or actually the knowledge management to another level. But we need to, and that's the purpose of the Paperless Movement, to explain how to access these features. Or tags, EverNote. Yeah, we have tags there. This is something many people can relate to. They used EverNote forever, and they thought, what is the hashtag for? And talking to Ian Small, the CEO from EverNote, he mentioned only 2% of the users actually using tags in EverNote. And I said, don't do it, don't remove it from EverNote. They just don't understand the advantages of tags. They never been taught why they are there and how they should use this. And I'm talking about the differences, folders versus tags and things like this. So yeah, this is the purpose.
Let me try to rephrase this, because this is guys, this is the problem when you have a doctor on the show.
It goes all over the place. And actually, getting back to your question about why is this guy paperless?
You know what?
And not paperless, but he's then, yeah, it's like Schrödinger's cat. She's dead and she is alive at the same time.
Well, I'm going to try to rephrase what you say in a simplified version, and tell me if I'm close here, because we covered a lot of ground there. My understanding, what you just said, is that the movement of paperless is shocking in the terminology, but really what it's about is using paper when paper is the best tool. Like you talked about with your book being on the shelf, or when you want to have that haptic feedback of experiencing the book. But reevaluating all the ways that we're using paper and considering, is this the best tool for jobs like note-taking or for book writing or for, is that kind of where you're looking at?
Yeah, it is.
The best tool?
I can condense this down to a very simple answer. So you asked me, do you hate paper? Get back to this point. And I say, no, it's actually the opposite. I love paper. What I hate is wasting paper. I hate it when I see that people print off emails and annotate on them, because this is something you can certainly do on an iPad and have a lot more advantages doing it this way. So it's the same for so many things which is used excessive, to eating too much meat and, all this, or wasting resources, energy and things like that. It's the same for paper. And we lose the, to appreciate the paper and a proper piece of paper and a fountain pen and so on, because we just throwing it away. But there are also things like Post-its. It's very hard to mimic this in a digital world, that you have a Post-it to remind you, this in-your-face feeling. That it is actually in the real world. I don't know how to explain this properly, and not disconnected in a digital world.
I want to pull in a comment from the questions here. First of all, I hope the audio is working better for you guys. Let me know if it is. I don't know if Tom's able to hear. Hopefully. It seems like he is.
Well, you're
check,
louder
check. 1,
now.
2, 3. Okay, it's louder. Good. just to make sure that you guys can hear us there. Janine puts in the comments, I'm trying to be paperless, and it involves breaking a lot of old habits and finding a good, secure backup system. So I feel like this comes back to kind of the more fundamental question of, if we're thinking about respecting paper, what applications are we looking at? And what kind of workflows are you questioning about whether it should be paper or paperless? You mentioned something about emails being printed. Are there some common areas of business or life that people focus on when it comes to changing habits? Like, what habit should I start with?
Yeah, so when you think of paperless, I think the first thing that comes to mind is scanning documents. And it was the same for me. I mean, I went paperless going with my notebooks into an iPad. But obviously there's more to this. And for my personal life, the next step was scanning all my documents. And there are the limitations for the government. So I'm in Germany. You still have to keep a lot of paper. But what I was able to scan, I scanned it and I sent it to EverNote. So just by doing this is now, so I'm using the Raven scanners. Those who follow me know this. And it's a cloud scanner and I scan it directly to EverNote. So whenever I get a paper mail, I put it into the scanner and it ends up in EverNote. And it's just a document dump there. I'm not structuring anything or doing anything because I trust EverNote that I can search and find as it does OCR of the documents.
Optical character recognition. So
yeah, thank you.
Turn the picture into text that a computer can search and read. Okay, just making sure.
Layla, I'm so impressed of how you are, keep all these things in mind. I couldn't have told what OCR is really written out. Tell you that.
The only reason, Tom, is because
you know
my
what?
corporate job was doing a lot of OCRing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I always say, I can Google it. Whenever I need to know it again, I just Google it. Well, yeah, but it's the same on EverNote. Whenever I need it again, I search for my document and I find it this way. So this is the advantage. So, but I think, getting back to the question, actually, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't try to make everything paperless. My father now finally said he wants to go paperless as well. And I said, okay, start scanning your documents, doing it step by step. And don't
like
try
mail?
to...
Like, what do you mean by documents? Give me some examples there, because I think some people are, what's like
here's
an easy one to start with?
Yeah, invoices. So
okay.
In a business, you have to keep invoices for 10 years, I think. So you have a lot of folders there, and I had them. And I scanned them away. So you can have them in the system. Contracts, I scan them as well, but you have to keep them in paper form as well. However, to quickly look them up, therefore I scan them in. Email, I'm not forwarding it to EverNote because usually I'm searching it inside my email program, or I forwarded it to ClickUp. So for example, one example, to make it simple, scan everything to EverNote, for example. That's an easy workflow. My workflow is a bit different. I have different setups on my Raven scanner. If I get an invoice that I need to pay per paper mail, I have a setup that it scans directly to ClickUp, actually. And ClickUp, it creates a task that I need to pay the invoice, sets a due date, and assigns me, so I don't forget to pay this invoice, including the attachment of the actual invoice. So this is how it works in my world then. But I think by mimicking this, you're skipping so many steps if you're just starting out that you don't understand the process in the end of the day. And another example is getting things done. So if you try to implement GTD, so I knew what GTD means. So yeah, if you try to implement GTD, I hear it so many times. Oh, Tom, I tried it so many times to implement this getting things done system. And this is what I hear from so many different methods. I wanted to implement his or her method one-to-one. And this is, I think, the wrong approach. I like GTD. I like other methods, and I'm combining the things that make sense in my world. And don't say it needs to work exactly the same way. I doubt that the people who invented all these methods actually using it exactly the same way anymore, because they also evolve. They need to update their, this is a starting point. And this is why the paperless movement and the courses that I teach in there are tool agnostic. So I think when you get the workflow down, then it doesn't matter what tool you use in the end. It would work with any tool, essentially. And once you understand it, starting your workflow with a specific tool, then you realize, maybe if I use the other tool, it fits better in my workflow. But you don't know without testing it. That's just how it is.
I love that. And there's actually some questions here in the chat about workflows. So I might pull those in here in a second, but I have a very
Sure.
important announcement first. Hey, Danny, good to see you.
This Danny, I don't know. He
Who is
pops
that
up on
guy?
Twitter and all over the place, but I
Danny-
thought I blocked this guy. Now he is here again. I reported him so many times on YouTube and things, but
Good to see you, Danny. And actually, I'm stealing a question from Danny that you're going to see later on in this chat. So if you can hang out, Danny, you'll see some repeat questions. But Richard is asking in the comments, why would you back up Google Drive? Does it all? And if Google goes down, then probably the end of the world, so no need for information. This seems to me like a workflow question in terms of, how do you decide what steps do you include in your workflow? I heard you mention before some legal requirements around keeping documentation. How do you kind of decide what your workflow should be for these? It sounds like you're maybe taking inspiration from different frameworks and then kind of, how do you go about deciding these kinds of technical things?
I think the important thing is we are all grown ups. So we are not starting from scratch and just starting something. We are already in a system. We are already working in some places and we have workflows already in place, if you are aware of this or not. So we should sit down, and that's what I did, and write it up on paper, or I'm using Miro, for example, to set up these workflows to wrap my mind about what do I do in the paper-based world or in the actual workflow. And then I realize, where are the bottlenecks? Where are the friction points? Where could I optimize and where can I put in some tools? So when I see Google Drive, we could start discussing, why do I use EverNote? Why does somebody else use Google Drive? Google Drive does OCR as well and things like that. Legit question. But I think it's out of context, because there's something I really hate, I have to say that this way, in social media, which is the question.
You can't hate anything about social media.
I'm a hater. I'm such a hater.
You and me both.
I actually have a t-shirt that says I'm fluent in sarcasm. Maybe I should wear this. Maybe other people get offended otherwise.
I don't think it's sarcastic when you genuinely dislike something.
Yeah. No, but what I really dislike on social media is if somebody asks the question, which is okay to ask the question, what is the best note-taking app?
Oh,
and then I see the answer. I see already what the answers are. Notion, Roam Research, GoodNotes, Notability, EverNote. So everybody answers one word, one tool.
Yep.
So, okay, to put this into context is, there was EverNote, and then Notion came along, and I saw it again. I'm quitting EverNote. I'm going to Notion. Notion is so much better. Notion is so much better. Yes, I'm using Notion. I'm using EverNote. And I would never switch from EverNote to Notion. So why is this? So people who are saying they switched from EverNote to Notion are actually using EverNote for note-taking. And they saw advantages in Notion with building up databases, the cross-connection, and these things. This is the reason why I'm using Notion for knowledge management. But can I scan directly to Notion? No, there's no cloud scanning. Can I actually add PDFs and it becomes OCR automatically? No, I can't. Do I have so I can go down this road and say why I use EverNote and you shouldn't use EverNote. I'm using EverNote for a specific purpose. And this is why I don't believe into an all-in-one solution.
I could not agree more. Insert project management instead of note-taking, and I share. I think I had a presentation at some point where I actually put that exact quote. What tool is the best for, whatever?
Yeah, we should. We should actually do this and then discuss the answers in another live stream.
Ooh, that would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could probably find a few in just 1 week. Well, Kristen has a very similar question here about differences between OneNote and EverNote. I know your channel.
I use OneNote a lot. However, EverNote has now. So this was the same issue when I was talking about handwriting note-taking apps. When I started on YouTube, I was this handwriting note-taking app guy, if you will. And I was talking about Notability, GoodNotes, NoteShelf a lot. And always people came up, but no, OneNote is so much better. And it's the same thing. I was talking about these three tools because you can use digital journals in there, which is a PDF with interactive links and things like that. This is not possible in OneNote. So again, there's a specific purpose that works in there. And it's really hard. When I'm living in, if I would use Office 365, I would, and the company is actually using it, I would use this as well because it makes it easy to share the tool, the notes with my colleagues and so on. So again, I cannot give the answer to this without actually talking to this person, understanding the environment and who they need to be connected with. So maybe one more thing, incorporate. So where I was working 8 years. In the end, I implemented Asana there for 500 people cross-department wise in the end, when we finished implementing it. And people ask me, why Asana? Well, it was there. I started with my team. This team had no idea how many projects they were running and so on. So I said, I need to have an overview. So the tool back then that was available was Asana. So I used it in order to collect the projects. That's it. But then I set up workflows and we increased team performance by 40% with the same headcount. And other teams wanted to do the same. And I said, I actually advertised it because by everybody using the same conventions, like what is priorities, what is a due date, things like that, we increased department performance, cross-department performance overall, because everybody was using the same tool, a single source of truth. Yeah, that's the doctor thing, all over the place again. But there's no yes and no black and white.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the fact that the context is one of the most important pieces. I think just to shout out to another YouTuber, Jonathan Stewart, which we both know, not the Jonathan Stewart, but the cooler Jonathan Stewart. I don't know if I could say that actually, but John always talks about the fact that your systems already exist, that your systems are who you already are, and we're just trying to make what you already are slightly better with these small modifications. And I feel like that's a lot like when it comes down to text selection, whether we're talking project management, note-taking, mail sorting. I mean, it's what do you already have going and how can we build off of that versus starting from scratch, which rarely is.
And that's another thing, awareness of the content, that there are actually different types of content. So I showed the paper notebook here, but I very rarely write in there. It's only if I have very deep insights or a specific quote or something. So it's that I like to go through. So I have a diary. I'm not writing on a daily basis. So it is a diary I started in 2009 and specific things happened. I write this down. And this is now nice going back, you can paste something in there and things like that. So, but on the other hand, when I see Danny, I know you love Obsidian and so many others do as well. I saw on Twitter somebody, I can't remember her name actually, probably Danny knows. She was mentioning that she uses Obsidian and Notion. And I said, I like both, but the issue I have is where do I put what? Yeah, I really struggle with this for real. In Notion, I have set up connected databases to find all the stuff. When I go now into a different system and then write down one word that actually exists in my Notion database as well, it's disconnected. So I lose context. So going back to NotePlan, for example, they're using Markdown files and Obsidian does as well. So this allows me now to connect both worlds. I can connect NotePlan and Obsidian, access both files, but they use these files in a different way. And I think if we could get to the point where we have a common file system or language to connect these tools together, that I have my knowledge all over the place at the same time, this would be so powerful. That's the mission or the vision behind the paperless movement as well. Example, ClickUp and Todoist. I don't like ClickUp for my personal tasks. I like Todoist for my personal tasks. So do I put it into ClickUp then as well, because I'm working there as well? So I'm using something like Plixi, which connects it and gives a two-way synchronization. So it lives in both worlds. In ClickUp, I do team management, but for myself, I'm using Todoist to tick off the boxes what I have to do. I don't have to go into ClickUp in order to do this. So by offering this to my team as well, that we say, okay, ClickUp is our single source of truth, but you can use Todoist, and I think they connect to Microsoft Task as well. You have already options for them to make their own system in the personal world.
And
So many things.
Yeah, well, that's the
Yeah.
biggest challenge, right? When people are talking about going paperless, you end up digitizing in some form or another, and then the data needs to move between all these pieces. And when it's a piece of paper, even if it's messy, and don't grimace, but I have some papers on my desk like I typically do. But you have these papers sitting around, and when you have a physical piece of paper, the sensation of just moving it between folders or taking a picture of it feels a lot simpler, even though it's not, and we know it's less efficient. But when it comes to this data or this, this image that we've gathered or something like that, actually keeping track of where that data is and where it needs to go next and what format it is and whether it's two-way sync or one-way sync, I think that's where a lot of people get overwhelmed. So one thing I want to just touch on, and I don't expect you to be able to give us the full rundown, but just as a kind of an overview, could you tell us just a bit about ICOR? Because one thing that stood out to me about your framework, which is kind of, for anyone who's not aware, is kind of your approach to going paperless and how you actually make this work, is that you have these steps involved and you also have specific technology that you think is good for each step. So could you just give us like the overview of what ICOR is?
Yeah, so no worries. I invented it. Why shouldn't I be able to talk about this? Yeah, so I'm not about how to go paperless. That's really hard to go this way. The ICOR in general is, again, about workflows. So to start easy, ICOR stands for Input, Control, Output, Refine. And what is Denny saying again? The paperless movement with paper movement. I actually, it's actually called paperless. So I already thought less paper movement should I call it, yeah?
Oh, no, I think the name's good. Danny's just being Danny.
Yeah, I know. So ICOR stands for Input, Control, Output, Refine. And this actually gives a bird eye's view on a productivity system end to end. So I have always input is the moment when I make digital notes or when I scan documents, even take paper notes. It's the same thing. You input it into paper note. But the issue I have on paper, it ends there. I have to do something else with paper. I have to scan it in or make a settle cast method. So you could actually use the ICOR framework in the paper world as well. But the point is input, I scan or write down notes. In control, I'm in the knowledge management system and the document management system where I manage these things in order to leverage the knowledge that I'm accumulating in the input phase. And then in the output, we have the task and time management, where we actually are productive then. And refine is going through the whole workflow that we have here, input to output, and refine the workflow. It's workflow optimization and workflow automation. So these are the subcategories in these behind these four words. And what I actually learned in the, it's now nearly 4 years I'm doing the Paperless Movement with the clients and my members, so many people who start out with this, they're all stuck in the input phase. So, my members, they are CEOs, upper management people, team leaders. So they should be productive, right? But I get questions like in one-on-one calls, like, I'm taking the whole day notes. And in the end of the day, I actually take 1 hour where I organize these notes then. And I just suggested, why don't you define the places where these notes belong to? And whenever you're in different meetings, you just open up the tool and make the notes there. I actually made a masterclass where I said, working myself in corporate for so long, I can relate to this very much. Sitting in these meetings, everybody takes note. Somebody is even there in the bigger companies taking meeting minutes. Then they send it out via email. And this ends up in the archive. And 2 weeks later, you sit there and discuss exactly the same thing. Why? Because there's no single source of truth everybody's looking at. Everybody took their own notes and things like that. So how do you overcome this? Well, you define a tool where you actually have these tasks in. and then just go there and use the commenting system while you have the meeting, and what you agreed on, just put it there. So if somebody gets sick or leaves and somebody new come in, they have the whole history there of the whole task and projects. But it's frightening to see in so many different companies the same picture. Project managers sitting there with an Excel sheet they send around via email and or Word documents, sending around. Everybody's reviewing it, writing their comments in. Then they have 5 different versions. Then they merge everything into one version. Then they send it out again. And then it's crazy. It's just crazy. And Asana, they made a study about where they just figured out 60% of the day job time, people keep looking for information. Yeah. They search for information. 60%. It's insane. And if you cut this down, this is the 60% performance increasement that I had there. I can go in more there. But yeah.
Well, what I think is interesting on that is that, what you just said at the very beginning, which was that people who are high-level performers, who've got a lot of shit to do, for lack of a better word, they're spending all their time on input. They're spending all their time putting notes somewhere that they then have to rearrange and then reformat because they didn't know where to put it. And it wasn't easy. I feel like that's part of it. It sounds like because there's so much friction at the input, people obsess over it and think that the solution is to just spend more time organizing. But what I hear from you is that if you actually have a really good input system, it should be easy. You just need to know what am I opening? What tab am I going to go into during this meeting? Type it right there in maybe a structure, a template, something that you've built that is designed for the way that you work. And then all of a sudden input is easy and you can focus on these other guys that seem to be where the real efficiency gains are. But if you're so distracted by input, oh gosh, this is like being a weather person,
but it's great. Yeah, it works.
but being so distracted with this input piece, you never get past that. And I think many people who attended this live today are probably coming because they thought this is all that it was. Oh, I just need a scanner. Oh, I need to get the new Remarkable, and that's going to solve everything.
And this is actually how the ICOR evolved, because I realized that everybody is stuck in input, and this is actually being busy, not being productive. Huh. And I had so many busy people around me. I have no time. I'm so busy. Because people are I think it's a bad sign if people are busy. And it's a bad culture if you have to say that you are busy, because otherwise people would say, okay, so he's not, working enough. And it's crazy how this goes. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question just kind of off the side of things here, but I think it'll tie in nicely as we start kind of helping people start taking action on this. We talked a little bit about the software matter, and I don't think we need to go too much further down there, but just know for folks who are joining us late, we had a discussion about the software side of things and how that really should be guided by your workflows. But I'm going to talk about this one. And Danny, this is, if you're still watching here, this is one that Danny actually asked me a few weeks back, and my answer is probably going to be very different than your answer. But I would be interested to hear, how do you find the balance between automating things like note-taking or capturing notes or transferring things? How do you balance that with actually the manual processing, which can have its own merit? Like you said, you take some paper notes for certain reasons. How do you find that balance for yourself?
Yeah, this is again something where you have to sit down and think about the different information that you collect and the weight of the information that you have in your own mind. So how to put this? I write really things into my notebook where I think this needs to stick. Whenever I want to open this, I would enjoy going through this and see the thoughts that I had there. Just for a visual reason. I don't know how to translate this properly. But for having a knowledge management base like Notion or Obsidian as well, this is where I think, okay, I have to collect this. And this is really powerful. I was using Roam Research for a long time where I just took meeting notes. And it was really powerful because after 2 months, somebody asked me a random question and I was able to find the answer right there. And everything that was related to this answer. And this is the interesting thing. So you mindless collecting nodes inside Roam Research. So how I used it. I'm not able to structure it in Roam Research or Obsidian. This is just not the way I'm. So we know this from Tiago Forte and many others. Who was the name of the original guy saying that we have gardeners and we have architects and we have librarians,
Mm-hmm.
and Notion is for architects, EverNote is for librarians, and Roam Research is for gardeners.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, I'm using Notion and I feel like I'm the architect of a glass house and I'm just growing the plants in there. This is how I visualize
Mm-hmm.
that. I need to have a basic structure in there. I need to be able to have this visual framework. But in there, everything should stay connected as well. So it is hard. I mean, this is exactly. I'm still with your question. Don't worry. But this is really the thing where I ended up stopped to stop taking notes. I was sitting in meetings. I didn't take notes at all because I was so overwhelmed in my head that I didn't know where to put these notes
Hmm.
and was so frightened of searching for the notes later on that I simply stopped completely.
Hmm.
And I had no issues. I still, I was still searching for this information later on and found it. There was no difference to the notes I did in a paper notebook before or at
Mm-hmm.
a place where I didn't find later on anyway. It's exactly the same thing.
Hmm.
So there's only one thing in my ebook, Paperless Note Taking Like a Pro. In there, I have a chapter where I talk about the science behind handwritten notes and that we keep things more in mind. So whenever you sit there and you handwrite notes down, you keep it in your mind. And when you go through the notes, you remember much more quickly what is written there. So this is sketch notes is the extreme from this. So you just draw a small picture and you remember everything that is written there. It's insane.
Yeah, I love
You
sketch
don't have
notes.
this from typed text.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the this is the only purpose where I think it makes sense to handwrite and to keep this in mind. And this is when I write into the notebook as well, because I have the feeling it burns into my brain. It's not on a
Hmm.
short term brain anymore. And when I feel, for example, a business idea or something like that, where I think I don't want to forget this, I put it there. I could have a database in Notion with business ideas. And I tell you, I have a database with video ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
then you start prioritizing these and then you end up adding the same idea again that you added
Guilty.
a year ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
guilty.
Mm-hmm.
These are still the obstacles we have to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the next step would be adding it to the database, and you get like Evernote when you or other tools as well. When you start writing, I think is it Roam Research? Some other tools, they show you recommendations or related content as soon you start
Oh,
writing.
that's
Oh yeah,
nice.
Evernote is a good example because you have an Evernote, the Chrome extension from Evernote. When you Google something on next to the search field, your notes in Evernote show up
Hmm.
that are related to your Google search.
Yeah, and I think many times it seems like it comes down to really deciding what do I want to imprint on my brain because your brain has limited capacity for what you want to store. Like I need processing space. I can't use all my storage. But also like what you're talking about here is the specific problems that could come up from having be too automatic. So I'm thinking like your example there of video ideas. I think that's a great one because I'm the same way as you. Just video ideas when they come up, just really quickly shoot them in to click up in a database, and I have to do a manual review of it every quarter, every month when I'm planning content. Like, is there any duplicates here? Because I wrote it one way one time, one way another. The two could kind of be the same, and that's where it's like, well, maybe it's time to start taking a slower approach to capturing ideas so they're more reflective? Or is that time processing and cleaning up later actually not that bad? And I should prioritize the ease of putting it in versus the ease of retrieving the information later. It's kind of like that, always that balance, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. So the digital world made it even more complicated because we can collect so much information with so easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people were much more um, they really thought about what to capture and what is worth writing down.
Mm-hmm.
I could also leave out a lot of words, like when you make a zip file or you compress a file, it just gets rid of zeros and ones out
Mm-hmm.
of this database, and keeps the same information. And you can do the same with text. You could just get rid of and the articles and things like that. So you could condense it down as well, like the bullet journaling or bullet points lists to
Mm-hmm.
take notes. Different note taking styles. We have a lot of things in this way. Um, but I'm not really sure when I see, and then you wrote down mental bandwidth from David Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure if it is limited.
Hmm.
I think we have much more capacity there than even than we could use in a lifetime.
Hmm.
The issue is really that the brain is built to forget things and focus on the things that you matter to survive.
Yeah.
So I heard, I think Tim Ferriss said this once. There's when you walk through a crowd and everybody is talking and you don't understand any story, but as soon somebody says your name in this crowd, you hear
Mm-hmm.
your name.
Mm-hmm.
So why is this? This is the proof for this, that your brain is actually understanding everything, filtering everything out, and then suddenly a word comes to mind and you hear it.
Hmm.
And I think by writing it into a notebook or make it very, leveling it up in your brain by focusly writing it down, it
Yeah.
burns into my brain. This is, yeah.
Interesting.
It would be so good to explain everything in German, but I want to stay globally, guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could help you with that.
Yeah, and no worries. The Germans wouldn't be happier either. Either I'm a Bavarian, so everybody in Germany knows who this is.
Oh, well, we have, I
It's
at
like the
least we have
Scottish
some.
people. It's like the Scottish people.
Got it. Got it. Well, I'm going to wrap us up here with some questions. And guys, if you are in the chat right now and you have any questions of your own that you'd like to ask Tom before we wrap up here, please go over there, wherever the hell it is for you, and put it in the chat so that way we can ask Tom. So I'm just going to pull some random ones from the chat to make sure we can get everyone's questions answered here. So you okay for some rapid fire, Tom?
Sure.
Okay. First up, well, this is just Greg being silly. So what is the paper? But the next question is from our old friend Danny, who is asking, how do you suggest linking information? So referring specifically to folders, tags, direct links. You mentioned backlinks at the onset.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I meant with that we can do so much more in a digital world. Backlinks is just one thing that you can do. I mean, I'm not sure if we share screens, but maybe next time I can show if I walk through the
Yeah, you're
Notion
welcome.
setup. But I like Notion to have my databases, but at the same time, each item in the database is an own page, so it's an own node. And in there, then I can reference other nodes. So we have the backlinks there. And now they just published something I think is also very important, are synced blocks. So this means you can have an information on two different places. And whenever you change on either place, the information, it will update on the other. And this is so important. This is the thing I don't like is duplicated paper. This destroys any productivity system or a single source of truth. When you have two task managers like the project manager, ClickUp, and Todoist, and you have to manage your task manually, or even your calendar and the task manager. This is why
Mm-hmm.
my
Yep.
task manager is also synchronized with my calendar. Whenever I update either way, it is updated on both ways. So I don't have to worry about another friction point, about another manual process that I need to do. So yeah, linking information. How do you suggest linking information? Yeah, again, it depends on what you need, but I think there's a way to have a general way to do this. The conventions that you don't need duplicated info, you don't want duplicated information. This already leads to the solution for the synced blocks, for example, and backlinking and things like that. So this is a whole topic on its own.
Yeah, so as long as you don't write it twice, you're on the right path. But it sounds like
Yeah.
almost the functionality of the tool can guide your workflow a little bit here, which I know we talked about like workflow guides the tool guides the workflow. It sounds like it's a two-way relationship there.
I mean, it's a thing with ICOR. So my members, they really want to learn about this ICOR framework. And actually, in the end of the year, we will launch the ICOR Mastery course where we deep dive. There's an ICOR roadmap right now available where my members go through and learn the principles, but there will be a deep dive course end of the year. And I thought about how to set up this course. And I realized I have to show my system. I have to show, because I wanted to avoid to say, okay, that's the system you should use. I want to stay tool agnostic, but it is needed to show an example and make clear. We went through the ICOR framework. This are the principles. This is how I apply it in my system. And you could go now and replace EverNote with whatever tool that works best for you. So you always need to have context.
Total rabbit hole, Tom, but I feel like this is a whole
I
interesting.
know.
It's a topic
it's always the same.
I would love to dive into at some point, because I'm thinking a lot about prescriptive advice and how the more prescriptive you are, intelligent people can pick through prescriptive content and tailor it to themselves. But if you're too generalist and agnostic, everybody except the advanced people are prevented from applying it because it's too abstract. Speaking personally as someone who just struggled with this recently, I'm listening to what you're saying.
Oh, great.
Like, yes, that's why. So I want to jump to one more question from your fellow German here. Christoph is asking, how could a personal knowledge base be built? For example, I'm not going to attempt to say that. Technique was mentioned. How do you say that? Zettelkasten? I'm going to butcher it. Zettelkasten?
Zettelkasten.
Pennsylvania Dutch roots do not help me with German, so.
No worries. Yeah, they couldn't have chosen a more complicated word than this one. So how could a personal with the Zettelkasten? Can I see the question again? You're
Absolutely.
Switching through the question. Technical. Yeah, again, the Zettelkasten method. I have a productivity guide about this, and you'll find all the information about Zettelkasten. And then, there are two sides to this medal. Is it the same in English? I don't know. But
coin.
First of all, understanding the Zettelkasten method and then finding the tool to apply it, because you can apply the Zettelkasten method in different ways. Depends on if you're using Obsidian or Notion. But I always suggest to try to do it with any tool and don't be too hard to yourself. One piece of advice. People ask me, because I recently started using Craft, another note-taking app. And people say, now you switch to Craft, so should I switch as well? And things like that. No. And how was I able to use Craft? Because I have a specific project. And then it's possible to test out new methods. So we are building a house right now. This is a complete different, disconnected project that has nothing to do with my business in Notion, the knowledge management in Notion or other systems. So whenever you have disconnected projects, that's a perfect use case where you can start using other tools and try to apply new methods and see if it worked for this project or not. So this is why everything about the house building is in Craft now, and I don't have to worry that's my single source of truth for house building, let's put it this way. Okay. I don't know if this helped, Christoph.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, especially because personal knowledge base includes so many different facets of life. Like if you were to think about the process org chart or like the departments and subsections of personal life, it is so broad. And like what you're saying here is certain projects may warrant an entirely different tool, like building your own house or whatever else it might be, where it's almost a bigger category than business because you have so many departments that are very different in how they function.
And this is one of the challenges as well when you're working in a business, in corporate as an employee, and you have personal life. What do you do with the calendar?
Oh.
Do you have two calendars and things like that? So connecting both worlds is very difficult as well. But we have Danny Hatcher here again with chicken and the egg right there. And I agree. This is what, for the question from Christoph, it's exactly the thing. Where do you start, with the method or with the tool? I would always suggest to start with the tool and playing around what it can do. Just have a sandbox. Disconnect yourself and don't think that now you switch. And I'm saying this from experience. I switched project managers and things so many times, and it hurts productivity so big time. Because especially when you setting things up, start as minimalistic as possible. When I was implementing tools like ClickUp for clients or Notion and things like that, we start very basic, and usually the clients, they want everything in there, but they can do this and can do this. No, we run this for 1 month, and if it works, then we add. You said it very well as well, Layla. It's always easy to add things, but it's always a challenge to remove these later on. But
especially with
many
paper.
don't listen, and then they see, yeah, then they have their own experience. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to learn the hard way anymore. We know this. We know this.
Yeah, but they don't want to believe us. I don't know what is the reason.
They want the shiny organizer. It's the bullet journal of their life.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, if anyone, as I'm dying, if anyone here has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much, Tom, for coming on here. I will say personally to those of you guys watching this channel, Tom and Danny, those two, man, you guys both are so organized around your note taking and your way of processing information. And I admit that I'm in that earlier camp that you described, Tom, of I just kind of give up on taking personal notes. I'll jot them here or jot them there, but I don't have that personal knowledge base. So I feel like a part 2, or at least some kind of follow-up video, is going to have to happen here as I attempt to actually take action on some of the things that you said here, because like many folks, this is kind of, it feels like an ongoing balance, almost like exercise. Like you have to get in shape. It's like steps at a time, and you keep wanting to revert to those old bad habits.
I don't know about Danny, but I'm in the same situation as you. I'm still optimizing, and I'm not that organized as many people think. And I doubt that any guru is as organized or uses the method exactly the same way every day. Life is changing every day. And 1 week later, you will have a completely different rhythm or things like that. And yeah. And to get back to the book, I said in the beginning, this is actually something everybody mentions in there. Just because they become successful, all the people in there, doesn't mean that they don't struggle every day with things. And I think, we should stay realistic. I would never say I'm the most organized person and things like that. It's a movement. That's why it's called Paperless Movement, not a paperless static thing.
Hey, our business is called ProcessDriven. Same reason. It's the idea of it's a verb. I think that's why we're kindred spirits in that way. And we can't all be perfect like Danny. So until then, I agree with Mahil's line here of change is only constant. And I just want to wrap up by saying, once again, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on here. If you guys have not followed Tom on YouTube, Tom, do you want to give the spiels of what you talk about over there? I'll put the link up here if anyone wants to subscribe to you before we wrap up today. What are you all about? Besides, this whole paper thing. What's your YouTube channel cover? You do
the same shit as we talked here. So if you want to find the Paperless Movement or Tom Solid, it's funny. You can put in Tom Solid and you will find now Tom Solid. When I started out, there was always Tom and Jerry coming up. But finally, SEO, realized, there are difference. Yeah, just go over there. I do talk about these methods as well that we talked about today. I also do a lot of reviews and new feature reveals of EverNote, Miro, and the note-taking apps that we talked about, but also hardware reviews for the iPad. Another thing, it's random. No, it's all about, this was always the goal on the YouTube channel. I'm just showing what I'm going through, what I discovered as well in this whole journey there. So
I love it. So if you guys are interested in that, which of course you are after watching this, do follow Tom on YouTube. Just search his name in YouTube. Link is also in the description of this video, or go to the website that is going across the screen now, and you can find all this information about his membership, the ICOR framework, the courses he has, and of course YouTube on there as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Hope everyone has a wonderful Friday evening, Friday day. I don't know, Saturday for some folks if you're up really early. And we will see you all next time on the channel. Thank you, Tom, for coming. And for everyone else, enjoy your process. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Layla. Bye.